Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 8, Episode 18, The Nap. Hello everyone. I failed to write anything down for my banter section of my notes. I apologize. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I haven't said that yet. I have to admit, I'm in a little bit of a funk today. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm just kind of, I don't know, there's like a general blah feeling. There are a few things on my mind, life stress things. I wish I could shake loose. Things that have gone on in my life for a long time. And, sometimes I can really just kind of shut it out, these emotions about certain things and certain stressors, but then sometimes you can't, it just gets really, really loud in your head. And I will sometimes even physically say, stop it, stop thinking about this, stop. But I can't help it sometimes. And today's one of those days where it's like things that have stressed me out for a long time are just so loud. That's the only way I can describe it. So why don't we just go ahead and get into this episode? The synopsis for The Nap is as follows. George's nap taking at his office gets out of hand. The treatment for Kramer's back problems includes swimming in the East River and sleeping on a mattress filled with sand. Elaine jumps to the wrong conclusion after a guy sends her a mattress, but she throws her back out trying to get rid of it. Jerry is driven nuts by an indecisive carpenter who mistakenly changes Jerry's entire kitchen for the worse. This episode was written by Greg Cavett and Andy Robin. We start out in a cafe. Jerry and George are having a little outdoor coffee time. George can't get over the fact that manslaughter is the least serious of all the murder charges. Literally the slaughter of a man. George goes through some other options for the name of instead of manslaughter, and Jerry says, how about I can't believe it's not murder? Next, we're in Monks. George talks about being up till 4 a.m. watching the Omen trilogy. Jerry's like, ooh, that's good stuff. And then they discuss what the character in the movie Damien was, the devil's son or the helper. George is so exhausted. Jerry's like, can't you get a nap at work? Not with that big glass window looking out on the hallway, he says. And I love a good nap. Sometimes it's the only thing getting me up in the morning. George exits. Elaine tells Jerry that she's going for a stroll later with the gentleman caller, Hal. Jerry likes the walking date. You don't have to look directly at the person. Elaine's like, hey, it's the next best thing to being alone. Kramer enters. He's all wet. Tells them he just swam 200 laps. You are kidding me. He shows Elaine his pruny hands. And he tells Jerry, oh, I saw Conrad going up to your place. Elaine's like, oh yeah, your new kitchen cabinets. How's that going? Slow, Jerry says. He has to hold this guy's hand through every decision. Then Elaine asks Kramer what he thinks Damien was from The Omen. Kramer says, nothing, just a rambunctious little kid. My take on this scene, this is a pretty typical Seinfeld scene here. There's some conversation relevant to the episode and some that's totally not relevant to the episode, which I love. Now, I've never seen The Omen. I looked it up because I know I'd heard of it, but I never saw it. I'm not really into those types of movies, but it came out in 1976, the original. And I looked up what the whole Damien thing was. And apparently it's a character, a little kid. He was replaced by his father at birth because the baby that his wife gave birth to actually died during childbirth, but she didn't know. And so he takes a baby whose mother died during childbirth and replaces him with another baby and doesn't tell the wife. But anyway, so they think this Damien kid is the prophesized Antichrist. In this scene, we learn about all of the plots here. Elaine and her gentleman caller, Hal. George wishes he could nap at work. Jerry's cabinets are taking forever because of an indecisive contractor. And Kramer has taken up marathon swimming, apparently. Oh, God. And I love the line when Elaine says, hey, it's the next best thing to being alone. Such cynical people, and I love it. All right, next we're in George's office. George is asleep behind a big book on his desk, and Wilhelm enters, needing that very book. George hands it over, and Wilhelm exits. He leans back, so tired. Then he kind of catches a glimpse under his desk and gets an idea. Next, we're in the park, Elaine and Hal's walking date. He tells her that Twinkies aren't cooked. It's just a substance on the bottom to make it look like it was baked. While Elaine doesn't care, they're delicious. She asks if he wants to sit down, but he says he doesn't sit on park benches. Said he threw out his back a few years ago, and now he only sits on furniture from ergonomic stores. Elaine laughs about those places having the worst names, like Back in Business or Good Vertebrations. Hal says, not this place. It's called the Lumbar Yard. My take on this scene, we're moving this story along here, seeing Elaine and Hal on their date. Hal is a total bore, if you ask me. Elaine could have totally done better. Looks-wise, he's pretty cute, but yeah, there's just nothing to this Hal character. And I guess now that I think about it, it's a little bit of a refreshing approach, considering that every female character brought on the show to date one of the men, they're always written pretty flat, like nothing to them. I mean, I guess Hal has his whole ergonomic thing here, but yeah, there's really nothing to him that's exciting. I love the way JLD delivers those lines about the names of those stores. Good Vertebrations. Also, side note, totally not related to the plot, but I'm always distracted in this scene by how amazing JLD's hair looks. Like the view showing the back of her head, those curls, the shine. I mean, no wonder she did Clairol commercials. Just gorgeous. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. The carpenter Conrad is asking Jerry so many questions about the cabinets. He's annoying the hell out of Jerry. George walks in. He asks Jerry if his eyes look any different. Oh, a little less beady today. He tells him that he found a way to nap in his office, under his desk. Oh, sounds like a really cool fort. Conrad comes in with another question about the edges for the cabinets. Jerry kind of snaps back at him. George introduces himself. It's Conrad, right? Conrad, Connie, or Con, whatever you want. George asks him if he could expand a space under a desk. Well, George, he's kind of tied up here, Jerry says. Well, it would have to be a night job anyway. You don't work after dinner, do you? Conrad goes on and on about it's whatever Jerry needs. Jerry's just so annoyed by him that he suggests, why don't you work on George's project for a little while? Whatever you want. A little later in Jerry's apartment, Jerry's on the phone with Elaine. He asks about the date with Hal. She's like, it was okay. He's coming over later to watch a movie. Hey, what's better for your back, couch cushions or a folding chair? I don't know, Jerry says. Maybe we'll just stand and watch the TV. There's a knock at her door, so she hangs up with Jerry. She answers the door, and it turns out it's a new mattress from the Lumbar Yard that Hal ordered for her. Oh, Elaine is so appalled. My take, there's not much here. We get to see Elaine's plot moving forward. She seems so unenthused about Hal's visit, very stressed about the seating situation. And it's probably because Hal is such a dud and obsessed with Twinkie facts and his back. So we see this mattress delivery. The next part of her plot has been planted. Elaine is so taken aback, pun, by this bold move to send her a mattress because of the insinuation. Next, we are in George's office. George and Conrad are discussing what he wants under the desk: a shelf for the alarm clock, a drawer for a blanket. That's what you want? That's what I want. We cut to the next morning. Con is almost done, and he's been asking George questions all night, you can tell. You want a cup holder on the left, the right, whatever. We hear him drill the last thing, and he gets up. George looks at his work. He is so excited. This is better than my bed at home. He hands Conrad his check, and he says, you get some rest. If that's what you want. That's what I want. Wilhelm walks by and greets George. Morning, Mr. Wilhelm, he says as he stretches. As soon as Mr. Wilhelm is out of sight, George crawls under the desk and pulls in the chair. Time to sleep. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer comes in and tells Jerry about his pool problems. He was swimming laps for so long, the aquasize class came in like a flabby-armed spanking machine, and then the diving class came. Oh, that was interesting. I got to find a new place to swim. Elaine enters. She tells Jerry she canceled the date with Hal because he sent a mattress to her place. The nerve of that guy. Why? He's got a back problem. So he thought he was going to take a role in the supportive hay? Elaine says after one date. Kramer asks the last name of Hal. Kitzmiller, she says. Elaine says she's probably going to chuck the mattress, but no, Kramer wants it. He says to come over to his place to see if it'll fit. It's good timing, too, because his old one sprung a leak. You have a waterbed? No, sand. It's like sleeping on the beach. Conrad walks in as Elaine and Kramer leave. He apologizes to Jerry for being late. He was up all night with George. He says, I can make up the time to you any way you want. And Jerry's like, how about this? Finish this today. And Con tries to ask more questions, and Jerry stops him. He says, no more questions. Just make a decision yourself. He says, okay, but I can make a decision any way you want. Just do it, Jerry says. My take, roll in the supportive hay. What a great line. Really funny. Not much to Elaine's part here. She's mad at Hal's assumptions, and Kramer takes the free mattress because, of course, he does. And I was thinking about this, a sand bed? That's way more intriguing to me than a waterbed. Did any of you out there have waterbeds? They were terrible. I mean, my back hurts just thinking about it. Speaking of backs and back problems, I know Shivani today would hate a waterbed. I would, oh my gosh. I don't think I'd even be able to get out of it. I had a cousin, well, we called them cousins. They were just really close family friends. And this guy, he was really materialistic, and like he came from a really well-off family. And so they kind of always had the latest gadgets. He was really into cars. But I remember his room that was like decked out. I mean, this was like the 80s. So he had like the latest stereo. He had a laser disc player, which, flash in the pan, but he was on top of the new technology. But I remember he had a waterbed, and when we would stay at their house, he would let us sleep in his waterbed. Like it was cool when you were a kid, because I was like, whatever, 75 pounds, and I could just hop in and out of it. But oh my gosh, I remember it kind of being fun for like one night. And then I was like, can I get something that's not just moving me ever so slightly all night long? All right, next we're in George's office. Steinbrenner walks in looking for George. He asks a woman walking by if he's seen him. Oh, I've seen him around, she says. Apparently, George was singing some song that Steinbrenner really wants to know. We see a shot of George from under the desk. He's been napping, and so now he's kind of trapped under there. Now, many of you probably know it's Heartbreaker by Pat Benatar. That's the song that Steinbrenner is wondering about. She's a heartbreaker, don't break her. I didn't know it at the time when this episode came out, which is kind of weird because I was super into 80s music, even in the 90s. But yeah, I don't think I knew this song, and I just remember hating that voice. I mean, it's Larry David, so he came back for this episode. He's left the show as the showrunner, or being involved in it in any way, but he came back for this episode to do the Steinbrenner voice. But yeah, the heartbreaker, like I hated it, and I still kind of do to this day. I don't really find it funny. Anyway, Steinbrenner says, well, I'm just going to sit and wait for him. He finds a People magazine on George's desk. The most beautiful people. Connie Selica. Nothing wrong with that. That's a blast from the past. Connie Selica. Was she married to John Tesh at one point? Maybe they still are. I don't know. But Connie Selica is such an 80s reference. I love it. I know this is 90s, which I guess, okay, so in the Notes About Nothing, they do say that Most Beautiful People issue was from 1996. So I guess she was still relevant then. But to me, yeah, she was so beautiful. I remember her. I can't remember what shows she was in, but Connie Selica, you don't really hear that name anymore. Anyway, George is just panicked and trapped under his desk. The actress in this scene who plays, I think it's an assistant or maybe just a coworker, her name is Jonelle Kennedy. She's also appeared in Malcolm and Eddie, CSI Los Angeles, and Chicago Fire, amongst many other credits. I liked this little trivia. Her mother was a member of the girl group, the Dixie Cups from the 60s, who sang Chapel of Love. I love that song. Go into the chapel and we're gonna get married. I showed my kids Father of the Bride within the last year, and oh God, that movie is so good. We started watching Only Murders in the Building with our daughter, so she loves Steve Martin. I'm like, you gotta watch. I mean, there's so many Steve Martin classics, right? But Father of the Bride is one for me that I'm just like, he is just a master. So anyway, they play that song in that movie. Back to Jonelle. She does a great job as this employee. She's very charming and pleasant on screen. All right, next we're in Monks. Hal and Elaine are at a booth, and Hal defends himself. He says, Elaine took it totally the wrong way. It's not what I intended. Well, what did you intend, Hal? Elaine says. He says he just wanted her to have the support of a proper mattress, the support she deserved. It's custom designed for every body type. He estimated her height and weight, 5'8", 110 pounds. Well, Elaine is so flattered by this. Oh, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. He asks, so you like the mattress? Yes, I'm so glad I kept it. My take, man, all it takes is a compliment and Elaine is just putty in his hands, right? But come on, Hal, 5'8". JLD is actually 5'3" in real life. There's no way. But I don't think Hal is interesting enough to have used this to, butter her up. I think he really maybe just is terrible at assuming someone's height. Again, Hal is so blah, just like this story, to be honest. Next, we're at the Riverwalk, people walking around, and there's a son and father looking at one of those viewing things on the side. The father is telling the son all of the sights along the skyline. That over there is Brooklyn. That's where Spike Lee lives. We see the viewfinder point of view and Kramer swimming. The kid tells his dad he sees someone swimming. The dad sort of looks at him. No, it's probably just a dead body, son. You see, when the mob kills someone, they dump the body in the river. Now, this is a rare scene where there's no Seinfeld character here. I mean, I guess, Kramer is technically in it, but all the dialogue is done by guest actors. And I have to say, this really cracks me up. It's so well done. The actor who plays the dad here, no, that's probably just a dead body, son. Really funny. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry's about to enter and Kramer tells him how his problems are solved with swimming. Jerry's like, what's that smell? Kramer says, that's East River. And Jerry is so disgusted that he's swimming in the East River since it's so polluted. Well, Kramer argues that technically Norfolk has more gross tonnage. How can you swim in that water, he asks. He said he saw a couple other guys out there. Swimming? Well, floating, but they were out there. And Kramer goes into his place. Jerry enters his apartment to find an entirely new kitchen layout. There's now a wall of cabinets opposite of the sink area, and he's in total shock taking this in. Next, we're in Elaine's apartment. She's calling to thank Kramer for bringing her mattress back, and she says, I'll just get my key back from you whenever. She hangs up and sits down on the bed, presses down. Wow, this is a great mattress. But then she notices the smell. She bends down and gets a closer whiff. Ah, it's so disgusting. My take, not much here, just getting some plot points that they needed to get out. I do love JLD's grossed out face after she smells the mattress. It's funny. Next, we're in George's office. Steinbrenner is still waiting. He's getting so upset. Where the hell is this guy? But he refuses to leave. The same woman comes by and tells him that his grandkids are there. Oh, and they all come running in with a dog in tow, and Steinbrenner apparently doesn't know any of their names. Hey, you little kids. Girl, Shorty, Mel, is your name Mel? We see George under the desk call Jerry to call for Steinbrenner. He says he's trapped under the desk. Who is this? Jerry, he says. And then one of the grandkids comes crawling over. Hi, I'm Brian. Beat it, Brian, George says. So the little boy crawls away. Jerry's like, why can't you just have Steinbrenner paged? No, they'll see the extension. And then he's interrupted again because his dog comes in and starts licking George all over the face. Gets the dog away and he tells Jerry to call in a bomb threat. Jerry argues about why he would do that. Just call! And he hangs up. Steinbrenner is trying to ask the kids about the Pat Benatar song. Hey kids, Heartbreaker. Anyway, the kids are just jumping around. The dog's barking. It's chaos. That same woman comes back and says, we've just received a call. There's a bomb in the building. Oh my God, everyone, under the desk, Steinbrenner says. Next, we're in Steinbrenner's office, and George has been caught. Steinbrenner says, when I saw there wasn't enough room under the desk for me and my babies. I'm sorry, sir, George says. Anyway, he tells George the terrorist wanted fitted hats like the players wear. That was his demand. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Elaine enters, puts her stuff down without looking up, but then when she does, she's shocked by the new kitchen. What the hell is this? Where are you? Jerry peeks his head through this little opening on the other side, right above the stove. He's like, you can see right through here. Elaine hates it. What is this? It's like you're selling movie tickets back here. I think it's kind of cozy, Jerry says. She tries to tell him what Kramer did to her mattress, but she can't have the conversation through that little opening. So she goes around, tells him that Kramer totally funked up her mattress. Jerry asks her if it smells like the East River. Yes, it does. And she pushes him against the cabinets, get out style. It's not a get out shove, but it's a shove. He tells her that Kramer's been swimming in the East River. Oh, great, she shouts. Kramer enters and sees the kitchen, and he thinks, oh, I'm on the wrong floor again. Jerry comes in and startles him. Elaine peeks through the opening and scares him again. Tells him that he ruined her mattress. It reeks. He says he thinks it's the East River. I think it might be polluted. George enters. Well, you really did it to me this time, Seinfeld. He rests his arm on the new cabinet that wasn't there before, and he does a double take. What the hell happened here? He points out how obtrusive it is. Elaine agrees. It is obtrusive. Very obtrusive, Kramer adds. Jerry doesn't think it's that bad. Well, can I get a stool in here? No, the stools go over there, Jerry says. No, that's no good. I'm leaving, Kramer says. Elaine agrees. I'm with Stinky. I'm going back to my place. So Elaine and Kramer exit. Fitted hat day, George says through the opening. Jerry's so excited that they're doing it. Apparently George is in charge of it. Hey, look at you. And then George freaks out. The job would entail guessing the head sizes of 59,000 different people. What if a pinhead shows up? I got to be on top of that. He says he's not doing it. He tells Jerry to call back and call off the whole thing. Well, can you at least get me a hat, Jerry says. Fine. What size? 7 5/8. 7 5/8, George repeats. Why are you shouting, Jerry says. I don't know. It's this place. I'm very uncomfortable here. My take on this scene, it's definitely the best scene of the episode. This new kitchen is I'm going to argue, one of the best guest stars of the series. It's really a guest star. It's a whole new kind of character that they all interact with. And it's so funny how everyone interacts with it. And I love too, how everyone hates it except Jerry. He's like, I don't think it's that bad. And again, the way they utilize these new cabinets, Elaine popping through the opening to scare Kramer, shoving Jerry up against it, Jerry and George talking to each other from either side of it. It's just fantastic direction, really great blocking. I enjoyed the scene. It's really well done. All right, next we're in Elaine's apartment. Hal is in the bedroom. He's like, oh, you're liking the mattress. Oh, I'm loving it, Elaine says, trying to get him out. You know, we should go. Hal notices the smell. What's that smell? Elaine says, what smell? He bends down. I think it's the mattress. Did something happen to it? Oh, you know what? I went clamming and forgot to hose off my boots. Clamming? Yeah, I clam and scallop. I clam and scallop. My take, we needed to see Hal smell the mattress here. That was the whole point of this. I did know what clamming was, and it's a really weird way that I know. I used to be obsessed with Archie comics. I think I've mentioned that on the podcast. And I remember there was an entire comic story about Betty. As I'm saying it, I'm like, this is not interesting, but Betty was clamming. And it's like this whole thing where you kind of, you press your toe down in the sand and then like the clam kind of pops out. That's all I remember from it. I could have looked it up and seen really how you do it, but I just remember being like, what the hell is this? I read the whole comic story, but I was like, this is weird. But anyway, Betty from Archie Comics went clamming one time. So I was kind of familiar with this. I don't know if scalloping is the same thing, but I knew what clamming was. And the more I say it, the more it sounds kind of dirty. All right, next we're in Steinbrenner's office. George enters and he tells Steinbrenner that the terrorist is going to call him. Steinbrenner is fixated on February or February. He doesn't like the extra R in there. His phone rings and George puts it on speaker. Hello, bomber? Jerry's like, yeah, this is a terrorist bomber. He says he changed his mind about the hats. Well, what do you want instead? You gotta want something. Oh, Jerry hadn't thought of that. But then he says, maybe if you call all the ticket holders if the game is going to be rained out. Well, George does not want to handle that, so he hangs up. What are you doing, George? You got to hang tough, sir. You don't want to stir the fat, George. He goes running out and says he's going to close all the windows in the stadium. And I'm very nervous. All right, next we are on the street. Elaine and Hal are walking and talking about stuffed crust pizza. Elaine loves it. Hey, I'll tell you, it'll be a long time before they figure out a way to hide more cheese in a pizza. And then Kramer comes by, almost runs into them. Elaine does the introductions and Kramer tries to guess Hal's last name. Langerhans. Kitzmiller. Oh, right. Kitzmiller. Elaine asks if he's taking a dip. Oh, I'm dipping. Then Hal notices a familiar smell. Kramer says he needs to get going, get to the pier before the ferry traffic gets too bad. He tells Elaine that he still has her key, but he'll get it back to her as soon as he can. And he leans in kind of like he's flirting, and she totally yes-ands this. Ooh, baby, and giggles. Kramer walks away, and Hal just stares at him, suspicious. My take, wow, we're learning a lot about Elaine's eating habits. She thinks Twinkies are delicious and that more cheese hidden in a pizza is fantastic. And the more cheese, the better for Elaine. I like that little moment between her and Kramer, that little flirty thing. It's very rare. I mean, we don't really see anything like that ever, but I guess you could say it's a bit forced, but I think they pull it off. I always liked it. Ooh, baby. And bottom line, we need to see Hal kind of put two and two together after matching the mattress smell to Kramer. Is Kramer showering in this episode at all? How bad does he smell? Or I guess the question is, how badly polluted is that East River? Maybe you can't get it off with a shower. Maybe it's like the BO from Jerry's car that one time. Next, we're at George's desk. We see him waking up to his alarm, gets up and closes his little compartments under his desk, emerges from under the desk and declares it's time for lunch. Next, we're at the pier. Hal approaches Kramer, tries to remember his name again. Kitzmiller. Oh, right, Kitzmiller. Well, Hal asks about his relationship with Elaine. You guys are pretty close. Oh, we go back a ways. And how can I put this? You've been in her bed. Yeah. This still isn't going on, is it? No, she put a stop to that, Kramer says. Hal is so relieved. Well, that's all I needed to know. He looks around. He's like, you really swim here? Kramer tells him, yeah, it's been really good for his back. And of course, that appeals to Hal, and Kramer jumps in the water. Next, we're in George's office. Steinbrenner enters singing the Pat Benatar song again, tells him he remembered that tune. And George isn't there, but he hears this ticking coming from his desk, obviously the alarm clock that's in the little cabinet. But of course, Steinbrenner thinks it's a bomb and runs out yelling, "Fire in the hole!" Next, we're in Elaine's apartment. She's trying to get the mattress out. She can't believe that the lumbar yard won't pick this up. She rests against it, but has to move away because of the stink. She tries to pull it a little more, and she falls over onto the floor. My take. Again, meh. I mean, that's just my kind of take for everything. I've just never been a big fan of this little bit. The mattress doesn't fall onto her at all. It's stopped by the wall. It's very obvious. And I've always been like, what's the point of this whole thing? Like, I don't know. She's not trapped by this mattress, clearly. You know, it's surprising that they would have left that in being so obvious, because in the next scene, which why don't we move on to that, we're in Jerry's apartment. He tells Khan that he wants it back the way it was. And Khan gets kind of sassy. He's like, can't you make a decision, man? Elaine calls and tells Jerry that her back went out. Well, lie down. She says, I am lying down. I'm trapped under a funky mattress. She asks if he can come over, get a doctor, or at least roll this thing off of me. Okay, he says, I'm sorry, I gotta go. Stay, go, whatever, Conrad says. So, okay, kind of my same thought. Again, it's just like this mattress is supposed to be on top of her now. It was clearly stopped by the wall. It's not even worth talking about, but I can't stand this bit because it makes no sense. I think the whole point of it was so that Elaine has an excuse to swim in the river because her back goes out. But it's like, no, she would not swim in the river because it stinks so bad. It's just all so poorly done, I think. I'm sorry to say that to Greg, Cabot, and Andy Robin, but this whole Elaine thing is like, what? It makes no sense. All right, next, we're back at the pier. Kramer arrives to find a bunch of people there. Hal is also there. He says he told his chiropractor about how great his back felt after swimming in the river, and he recommended it to all of his patients. An old man nudges Kramer to step aside, and he jumps in. Oh, he just sunk like a stone. Back at Steinbrenner's office, you can tell how much I love this plot. The bomb squad is there with a bomb diffusing robot. George is trying to convince him that, it's nothing. I'm sure there's no bomb in my desk, because he knows the real reason there's a ticking. The robot finds a drawer with Snickers inside and a Playboy. Steinbrenner has to make fun of George for that. There's more compartments underneath, the bomb squad guy says. Oh, that must be where the bomb is. We see Chainsaw go through the desk, and George is so sad about his napping fort getting destroyed. And Steinbrenner says, you know what? No more desks, just lucite tables. All right, next we're back at the river. Kramer is trying to swim, but keeps getting run into by all these other people there. It's so crowded. And one of them is Elaine. She's got a kickboard and she's just swimming away. She greets him. She says, I'm loving this. Hey, I'll see you at the coffee shop. And she swims away, kicking and splashing Kramer. There's a tag to the episode. George enters Jerry's apartment and Conrad is there finishing up the new cabinets. It's totally back to normal. He says, hey, Con, is Jerry around? No, and I prefer Conrad. So I heard about the desk, he says. Yeah, there was something so reassuring about that cozy little space. Yeah, whatever. And Conrad leaves. A little later, Jerry enters with groceries. He loves what he sees. Says not bad for $4,000. He puts his groceries away. He opens a cabinet and George is sleeping inside. He pauses and goes back. I can't believe it. Takes out his Pop-Tarts. I got the low fat. My take. Whatever. I guess it's funny how hard Elaine is kicking past Kramer. I'm just pulling at strings now to find something positive. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Stores are closing all over the country. Online businesses have taken over, and soon brick and mortar will only be seen in museums. What can we do? Well, we at backinbusiness.com figured if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. At backinbusiness.com, we specialize in ergonomic furniture that we've bought out from all those mom and pop shops that went out of business. We cleaned out good vertebrations and the lumbar yard and have a whole warehouse full of supportive chairs and mattresses that will love your back as much as you deserve. We also made sure to approach Working Spine to 5 and Let My Love open the door some before they went under and snatched up all the pillows and desks they had to offer. At backinbusiness.com, we provide free delivery for all of our furniture so that your back stays healthy throughout the entire process. Our delivery men have been highly trained on lifting from their legs and wearing protective harnesses. So type up backinbusiness.com from your device while making sure you're not craning your neck down too much and start your journey to better back health. For a limited time, with every purchase, you will receive a free box of Twinkies, one of our biggest clients. Apparently working there is terrible for your back. Backinbusiness.com, because life is too short for a whack back. And we're back. There were some extras. There was an inside look for this episode. So the whole sleeping under the desk plot for George was based on Greg Cavett, the writer's friend. He apparently worked at this consulting firm in Boston, and people there worked insane hours. So definitely not the same as George. George doesn't work insane hours. He's just exhausted from watching too much TV. But anyway, at this company, Greg was saying how, all these people would just work insane hours, 14, 16 hours a day. And that one of his friends figured out that if he just snugged up under his desk and pulled the chair in, he was invisible and could catch a quick nap. And he's like, oh, that's a really good story for George. The writers also said that they were really nervous for Larry David to come back to do the Steinbrenner voice because, back in the old days when Larry was there, he was sort of the head guy to approve the scripts and rewrite anything he saw fit. So they were like, oh, this is going to be uncomfortable. But it turned out great. Apparently, they had some bloopers that they showed on the inside look where Larry David kept laughing at his dialogue. So that made for a really nice experience. They were so relieved. In the commentary, apparently Conrad, whatever you want to call him, was based on this guy, Stan, who was the prop guy for the show. And he was notorious for never being able to make a decision. He would present with props and stuff, so many choices for every actor and too many choices. And I think it would get under Jerry's skin, but it was sort of a joke for a while going oh my God, this guy, he cannot make a decision on, for himself. So that's what Connie was based on. There was a deleted scene that involved Elaine. The lumbar yard is at her place picking up the stinky mattress. And the guy is kind of put out. He's like, we're not responsible for stench. And she's like, I know, just bill me for the new one. And she asks if they could help her with the other mattress because they looks like they're switching it out. Well, they ignore her and just keep walking away. And she's like, that damn lumbar yard. She calls after them. Next time I'm calling Spine-tastic. goes inside, tries to move the new mattress, and falls. Yeah, this would have added nothing. It's not funny. It would have made it worse, in my opinion. In the notes about nothing, there was some deleted dialogue on the walking date. So we would have learned this about Elaine. She tells Hal that she's seen every episode of Hawaii Five-0. Hal's like, well, aren't there some lost episodes? She said, no, they found them. Again, whatever. Kind of an interesting trivia about Elaine, though. Hawaii Five-0. Big fan. Along with Twinkies and cheesy stuffed crust pizza. There was something on the IMDb trivia page. Hal was wrong. Twinkies are, in fact, baked. All right, let's move on to Greg's sack lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor, and every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. Greg did mention that he was pretty busy this week with some house guests, so he's got a pretty small sack this week, guys. And that's okay. We're happy for any sack from Greg. Am I right? So his overall thoughts, he says, this episode is most memorable for George's story, but I do like how Kramer and Elaine end up swimming in the East River. A funny bit that ruins yet another Elaine relationship. While all the stuff is mildly funny, there is just way too much Steinbrenner here. Oh, I could not agree more. I do like George's storyline, except for Steinbrenner being involved. I wish, it just gets too complicated in my opinion. I'll get more into this in my final thoughts, but I've got opinions about the Kramer and Elaine storylines overlapping. Next in Greg's sack, he says, my favorite moment, which isn't Elaine's, is when George is yelling at Jerry for making a bomb threat demand where he requested fitted hat day. The line, what if a pinhead shows up? I have to be on top of that, is up there in my top 3 George lines of all time. I know, that is really funny. What if a pinhead shows up? I just visualize it kind of like just someone at the stadium trying to find a hat, speaking to a manager, like, I have a abnormally small head, sir. and George is on call. They have to in those days kind of beep him or something. That would have been hilarious. That's an episode I'd like to see. The Pinhead. There's your reboot idea. Favorite Elaine moment is when she's mad at Hal for ordering her a mattress as if he was going to be spending time there, and then her 180 when he assumes she is 5'8" and 110 pounds. Smitten Elaine is hilarious. Oh, totally. The 180 turn there is so great. She's so mad at him, but then it's like, oh my God. Totally smitten kitten after that. Finally, Greg says, overall, I'd say it's a pretty weak episode all around. Yes, we are on the same page yet again. Thank you so much, Greg, for those thoughts. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, my favorite Elaine moments. I do love when she says, good vertebrations. I will say, if we do come across some kind of an ergonomic store or just maybe something in a catalog that's an ergonomic, whatever, desk or couch or chair, I always have to say, I wonder if this is from Good Vertebrations. I just like the way she says it. A close second, I like when she pops out in that little opening and scares Kramer. Hey! Thanks a lot for ruining my mattress. Now that I'm thinking about it, I probably should change it to that 180 she does. That is a really great moment, Greg. All right, close third with the 180 she pulls when Hal thinks she is 5'8" and 110 pounds. All right, and my final notes for the episode. I mean, how many times did I say meh? It's a very blah episode. The Hal stuff is kind of funny, but it gets too convoluted with the Kramer stuff. I do love when they try and combine the storylines, but this one just doesn't do it for me, or it doesn't do it for me in the way they did it. I love an overlap, like I said, but I just think that we needed more. We just needed more. Something else being added. I just said it was convoluted, but what I mean is something better added to it versus Kramer just stinking to high heaven and then Elaine ends up in the East River. It makes no sense. And the smell is throughout. So it's why would you, just because it's good for your back? I think it's like any river or just swimming in general. I don't know. It seems a little forced, which is why it's not my favorite. JLD has some moments, but this isn't the most substantive plot for her. Unfortunately, we get too much of the dumbass Steinbrenner plot. Like I said earlier, I like the George napping nook. I think it's really funny how it's so George to have this done to his desk so he can nap. But just the way it led to the bomb threat, Steinbrenner in it a bunch, and not funny to me at all. As I've said before on this podcast, I am just not a Steinbrenner fan. Very blah episode overall. And I think that's all I can say about the nap. Please be sure to follow the podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.